All right, welcome back to another live Wednesday training where every Wednesday I go live talking about all things health, wealth, mindset, relationship, all the things that are going to help you make yourself a better man, husband, father, and human being so that you can go out and live the highest version of yourself. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about conscious uncoupling and how to navigate through the divorce process. And so for a lot of people, this might be a new concept and this idea of conscious uncoupling. We're going to talk about what that means, talk about some ideas around co-parenting strategies if we have time, how to maintain mutual respect, managing some of the legal and emotional complexities, and then how to move forward life after divorce. Now, last week, if you missed the training, we talked with Joe Clark, who's a lawyer, and he's helped several people navigate through the legal complexities of a divorce seamlessly without having to hire a lawyer and be in the whole $50K and drag it on for 2 years. So if you missed that episode, definitely go back and check out that one. That was a big one. It was a longer episode. We went for almost an hour diving into the nitty-gritty, and so you're really going to want to see that one. Before we jump into today's episode, if you don't know who I am, my name is 𝙬𝙚𝙧𝙚. I'm a best-selling author. I was a former first responder for 15 years. I've been married for 12 years, and for 10 of those years, my marriage was on the brink of divorce. There were so many ups and downs, and I was able to radically change it in just 3 months. And the crazy thing was that I had done so much work prior to that. 4 years of therapy, I was a life coach, best-selling author, all these things, spent thousands of dollars of coaching, and none of it worked until it finally did. And so afterwards, I reverse engineered the process and I figured it out. I said, hey, is there a framework? Is there a way that I can teach other men what I just learned? Because I spent years trying to learn it. And in just 3 months, I was able to radically change my marriage. And it's only gotten better and better and better. And that was even after 10 years of turmoil. So now I am on a mission to help other men do the same as I did, because I know it's possible and I know they can do the same. And if you're interested in building an unshakable marriage and deeper connection with your kids in just 90 days, feel free to reach out to me, drop me a line, and I will get you the details. Now let's get into the training. Just as a near-death experience can wake us up to the true meaning of life, so can the death of love or a relationship awaken us to the trance of maybe the false beliefs that we've had about who we are as a being. And in an instant, our old story is revealed to be just that, a story. So what I want you guys to first notice when you go through a major breakup or a divorce or a separation is to start noticing the meaning that you're making of the breakup. And for most of us, we see it as that we are a failure, that we are not loved, that we are not wanted, that we are alone, that we're disposable, all of these things. And so start asking yourself, what does it mean? What does this breakup mean about me? And what am I making this breakup to mean about the relationship with the man or the woman, whoever that is that you're attracted to? Because a lot of times people exit relationships and they start saying things like, men always choose other women, not me, or women just don't like me, or no one really cares about my true feelings or needs, or men only want me for this one thing. This is all stemming from your source belief or your source fracture story. Some people call it that. Now, what happens is, and this is really important, we're going to talk about why this work, usually it comes, again, unfortunately, we don't start doing this work, a lot of the deep work, and I don't see a lot of therapists do this work, but I know in my own personal growth, this is what helped me. And a lot of us, unfortunately, we don't do it until we reach that breaking point where the divorce has happened or the separation has happened. And then we start to actually dive into this deep work. And so some of us never do it, which is even worse. But the bottom line is we tend to duplicate past disappointments over and over again. And it's largely just from the function of the beliefs that we formed a long time ago. And these are what I'm referring to as our source fracture beliefs or our source belief pattern, okay? It's the meaning that you gave to the original hurt that happened in your heart, and that has become the underlying narrative. And that underlying narrative is typically something like, I'm not safe, men are out to get me, love is dangerous, women always do this, never get married. I hear guys say that all the time. So start asking yourself, how did you relate to yourself in ways that validated this source belief pattern or this source fracture story? Start to look for ways that you may have trained your former partner to treat you by how you tend to treat yourself. So if, for example, if your former partner abandoned you, Look for the ways that you self-abandoned throughout the relationship. If he or she was self-absorbed and self-serving, right? Everyone's like, oh, he's a narcissist. Well, look for the ways that you may have treated your own feelings and needs as if they didn't matter. If he was critical, look for the ways that you might be inappropriately hard on yourself. Because this is a key. It's when the breakup happened, you want to take 100% ownership and responsibility for you, because if you don't, you're just going to go back into another relationship doing the exact same thing. And that's why we see that second and third marriages, they end up, the divorce rate's even higher. Right now, first-time marriages are at 43% divorce rate. If you enter a second or third marriage, the divorce rate is around 60 to 73%. So it's not good. And the reason is because people aren't doing this deep work before they move on. The other thing is, ask yourself, how did you set your former partner up to validate that source, belief, or fracture? So, for example, you might say, I failed to share my feelings and needs, and so my former partner couldn't have possibly known what I needed from him or her and couldn't help but disappoint me. I didn't want my former partner to be mad at me, so I failed to set healthy boundaries because it only seemed that was the only way out of my chronic self-abandonment, and that was to leave. Now, remember when you do, these are both examples. Now, remember, when you do this work, do not be a victim when you're doing this exercise. Just don't say like, oh, I'm a terrible person because I didn't do these things. No, just say that you made a choice to do it. And you can't grow out of these old patterns if you keep telling yourself the victim. But the reason why this is important, that you have to do this deep work, and it's like my friend Jean Marie Jobs says, who's a transformational coach, she says, how are you complicit in the relationship? Like, what were you doing to allow this to happen? Because you might say, oh, no, I'm the victim. Yes, but how were you showing up that it was allowing the pattern to continue? That's the key. Another question you might ask, and by the way, I'm going to form a nice little handout here because I'm asking you a lot of self-reflection questions and it's going to get lost in the video. If you want that handout, just simply comment below, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message, and I will send you this handout specifically so you can go through this dialogue if you're going through a breakup process and you want this script to help you so that you can kind of synthesize all these ideas, right? It's a lot to have to process. And so having a nice like list where you can journal and do this work, I'm happy to send it to you. So the other thing to ask is, how have you unrelated in your life, how have you validated your source belief or your fracture story? And what I mean is that we tend to project onto the universe the worst of our childhood, imagining that life is punishing us or withholding or this is uncrueling in much of the same way that you're experiencing it from your primary attachment figures, such as your parents, and then later in your relationship. So another exercise or another set of questions you can start asking yourself is, how can I relate to myself in ways that would demonstrate the truth of my value, my power, my worthiness to love and being loved? What new skills, what new capacities might I need to develop to show up this way? And so, for example, I can begin paying attention to my own feelings and needs before automatically tending to the feelings and needs of others. And the skill that I would need to learn is to better gauge what my feelings and needs are, right? Another set of questions you could ask is, how can I relate to others in a way that demonstrates the truth of my value, my power, my worthiness to love and be loved? What new skills, what new capacities might I develop? And maybe the other thing you'll say is, I can take the risk to share my authentic feelings and needs with others so that I can discover who cares about me and who doesn't, and to know which relationships to continue to invest myself in and the capacities that I needed to grow. Number one, the ability to tolerate being more vulnerable, and number two, the willingness to receive. This is so critical, this work, guys, because a lot of times we just skip over this, and a lot of it we just say things like, my needs don't matter. None of these things matter, right? And that nobody cares about me. The reality is, how can we show up in the next relationship, right, addressing these needs? And how can I step into my power? Because we don't even recognize that we're giving away. We think we have to give it away because that's the only way we're going to be loved. And the reality is, no, it's not true. So you got to start setting these boundaries. And unfortunately, the turmoil, the conflict, and you've heard me say this many times, your conflict is your solution. So I'm hoping for many of you, as you're going through this uncoupling process, if that's what you're going through, this can be actually the moment that jettisons you actually into growth and into healing, and it might stop the uncoupling completely. Who knows? Okay. Now, let's kind of continue. We're going to go a little bit deeper in this uncoupling process. Now, to do this process, okay, you've got to be more interested in what's possible from here on than you are in rectifying the past. And the more invested in how you might transition through this harmoniously than in getting what you want in the short term. Because a lot of us are just interested in, especially when we're in this pain and we're in this hurt, we just want it to end quickly and we want to just get quick results. This is not a quick term solution, and you're going to have to go deep through the process. That is the only way, I'm telling you, that is the way to go deep. And so you need to be more devoted to creating safety, cohesion, and well-being for all that are involved, rather than trying to be right or bringing out revenge. You have to consciously create the possibility of an affirmative future while coming to terms with the painful loss of the future that you envision. It's a little like building a plane while flying on it. And let me tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. And so imagine this. I always tell folks when they're going through a separation or a divorce, how would it look, right? We have been told that this is the messiest of situations and that it's just going to bring pain. It's going to be agony, going separate ways. How would it be to reframe that and say, I'm going to show up and be the best damn husband or man to this woman who I'm separating. I'm going to be the best damn father to these kids in a divorced relationship. It's possible, but we don't set up that paradigm. We don't set up that belief or that world. We set up the idea that, oh, this is going to be terrible and this is how it's going to be. And you can do the same thing in your uncoupling process. Like, what would it be like to actually be the best of friends, to support each other in your successes, and to continue doing this, to pledge to one another that you fell in love with each other at some time, and you're going to support them in their new lives and help them transition and keep your friendship intact. Like, is that possible? And it's only possible if you can actually dream enough. Another big set of questions you can ask yourself is, what gifts? Now you're kind of reflecting after the relationship has ended. And this is kind of a checkpoint for you to go through and kind of just debrief yourself. And so the question is, what gift has this relationship given me that I can acknowledge, appreciate, and be grateful for? And for a lot of you, there might have been some amazing opportunities that this person gave you and showed you. Maybe you learned a greater appreciation for music or for the love of being outdoors, or who knows? But there's probably something that you can take away and appreciate that this person taught you. The second thing is, what's your next step in generating the future? What action could you take, or what choice could you make that would begin to bring this into fruition? And so, for example, I could say, I'm going to invite my former wife and her new boyfriend to join the kids and me for Thanksgiving dinner, because I can pray for the happiness of my former partner and send blessings her way. I can be flexible with our custody agreement and tell the children that they can see their mom or their dad as often as they want. And so transformation often begins with what we're willing to subtract from our lives rather than what we're trying to add. And setting an intention to transition through this radical change of heart, it will immediately start to reveal everything you need to let go of in order to realize that goal. The Japanese even have this saying that you never know your wife until you divorce her. And the point, what they're doing is they're pointing to the radical change of personality that can overcome the best of us, right? When we're going through this emotional process, especially the decimation of a relationship. And so to step into this deep relief, you're going to have to be willing to hold your righteous narrative a little less rigidly than maybe how you were before and how you were wrong. We all have stories to tell, listen, but most of them are so steeped in biased interpretations about what happened that you've been telling yourself and others about your breakup, and it's filled with a ton of assumptions that may or may not actually be true. And humans understanding, they can't help but be highly subjective. Our memory, our brain actually does this. And a lot of recent studies actually show that we're prone to recount events, not the way that they actually happen, but through the interpretive lens of our pre-existing worldview. Your brain will always be biased to you. It's shown in a lot of the research. And so one of the biggest things I would admonish you guys to do is to take up a forgiveness practice. I have an amazing handout on forgiveness that I give some of my people in my private clients, and I'm happy to give it to you. Simply comment forgiveness below, and I will send you this powerful exercise that I give to my private clients, and we see massive breakthroughs for them. So highly recommend that you do that. It's a big, big, big one, and I think it's probably an underrated, and I would say also less less thought about, less used a forgiveness practice. It's a less, it's even practitioners, they use it way less in their practice, and it's underutilized. And I think it's maybe even unconventional, but it's one of the most powerful. And you think about it even from a biblical perspective, right? When Jesus admonished us to pray for our enemies, he didn't do so because it was just a nice Christian thing to do. He was teaching us to be spiritual masters, demonstrating how we can trump the temptation to reach from the lowest, most base part of ourselves and thereby risk locking ourselves into a lesser life. He was challenging us to be a force for goodness and love in the world, regardless of what was coming at us. That is personal power, and that is being a love alchemist. Now, I want to transition here, guys, and talk about a little bit about the art of a conscious completion. Now, clean completions, they consist of 3 parts. Number 1, we have to acknowledge what this person has meant to you. Number 2, you start appreciating the gifts he or she brought into your life. And 3, make a sincere attempt to restore the wholeness to the situation by offering amends, either to the people that you've hurt directly or by declaring your commitment to never again repeat the same mistakes with someone new, okay? So let me kind of go through the clearing the air process, because in order to dissolve tensions, you've got to clear the air. And obviously inviting your former partner to do this is always going to be the best, but maybe it's not always possible. So you can do it by yourself or you can do it with a partner. But number 1 is you want to understand the purpose of the exercise. It's not to get your needs met. It's not to change their mind. It's not to win an argument. It's not to resolve old issues. The purpose is simply to release any old hurts or resentments. So it's going to be really, really key that you both understand this and you're both on the same page. And if you're just doing this by yourself, that's fine. Then just understand that's the intention. Number 2, you want to identify the active hurts or disappointments that each of you are still struggling with. You can list these down. You can list down your resentments, anything that's incomplete for you, or just, maybe even if apologies haven't been offered, things that you feel are just still stuck with you. Number 3, you want to become willing to take responsibility for the impact that the behavior has had on your former partner, okay? You don't have to agree. You probably are going to disagree, but you just want to listen to this person and let that person be heard. When you go through this process, if you're doing it with your partner, decide who's going to speak and decide who's going to listen. If you're the speaker, you're invited to share all your hurts and everything that you're struggling with and how it impacted you, okay? And just go through the process. My self-esteem is at an all-time low because of your constant put-downs and constant complaints, or I've been unable to sleep for weeks and just been traumatized about how you suddenly left. For the listener, again, you're not going to try to defend yourself. You probably won't even agree with what your partner's saying. Regardless of what you think he or she's telling you accurately, just try to see the situation from their perspective. Take a little moment of empathy. Be willing to take responsibility for the impact of your behavior and how they viewed it. You don't need to negate them. You don't need to minimize them, dismiss them. Just be interested. Be curious about what the pain that they believe that they're struggling for. This will give you an ultimate sense of compassion. And then the last step is you want to let your former partner know what you now see about the impact for this behavior and how it has had an impact on them. Okay, so just allow yourself to be genuinely present with what your former partner just shared and place all your attention on them. Extend this sense of authentic care and concern for the impact that your choices and actions made upon them. Again, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You're just showing kindness back to them. You want to mirror back, again, a little detail here. You want to mirror back to what your partner, what you can see about how your choices and actions and how it impacted them. So that's it. Active listening, empathize, be compassionate. And if you want, you can even offer to make amends by just taking the right action. And so this is going to really wrap the process up, because for the listener, it's going to give you a chance to just consider the amends that you can now make. You obviously can't go back in time. You can't change what happened, but you can take wholesome right action to try and repair the damage that's been done. And for most of us, we probably have kids together, or you're probably going to see this person in the future. And it doesn't matter, again, who's right or wrong. It's about being kind. I always think about that. Don't worry about right or wrong. Be kind. And so can you repair in the future and take the steps to clean up the mess that you made? Can you take ownership and responsibility? That's why the hurt was there in the first place. And again, you don't have to agree. It might be illogical to you. Doesn't matter. It's how that person feels. So again, for the speaker, just think on what would actually help repair the damage done by your former partner, and allow yourself to receive that restitution when it's being offered. While, again, there's nothing that can be undone. There's nothing that needs to happen. There doesn't need to be any retribution. Once you guys feel like it's complete, then you can switch roles and go back to the other person. The last thing I want to say, guys, and I'm going to wrap this up, is there is this idea in Japan. It's called kintsugi. It's in centuries old Japanese. It's the art of repairing broken pottery with silver, gold, platinum. And they turn this seemingly ruined object into one of unique beauty and elegance. And the philosophy behind kintsugi is to honor the history of a damaged object by validating its value and how it's repaired. And often the process creates something new, even more beautiful than the actual original object. So this can also be what we might think about in a ruptured relationship, a divorce, a separation. Can we repair a fractured relationship in the same way that dignifies its history and validates its worth by how we behave when it's all over? That's it for this week. I've got a ton more. Next week, we're going to actually go into the final process of the uncoupling process. There's been multiple parts of this. We've talked about how you can prepare yourself, why people are divorcing. If you haven't missed the part of this series, we went into the details of why people are divorcing the first place, why relationships are breaking, what are the number one causes, what's the cost of divorce, how is it affecting the children, what you can do to mitigate some of the damages financially, but also emotionally in divorce. And now we're talking about, hey, it's over. You're going through with the divorce. This is a healthy way to uncouple. That's not really practiced too much. It's becoming probably more well known and a little bit more mainstream. But this uncoupling, conscious uncoupling process is one method that you could utilize in your tool belt. And we're going to talk about next week about how to consciously, it's going to be a little bit further on post uncoupling communication and a little bit more deeper into how you can kind of resolve your own hurts and how you guys can start to live in a post uncoupled relationship. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you need any help from me, please never hesitate to reach out, and I'm happy to serve you guys. Have an amazing rest of your week.